We heard this terrible boom, and my boys looked around and saw the bridge starting to fall. Well, as soon as I heard the sound, I, of course, ran out the back door to see what was wrong with the boys and what the noise was. And as I got out my back door, of course, I could see what was happening, and I stood right here and watched the whole bridge.
What did the bridge look like?
Well, it's like my little boy said. It was just like you would build a bridge out of child's building toys. And then if you just take a stick and just knock the props out from under it, that's the way it went.
Did you see all the trucks and cars falling?
I could see part of them, yes, from where I'm standing. But, of course, where the trees and things are, I couldn't see too much.
An event that left so many heartbroken. December 15th, 1967. 55 years ago, the Silver Bridge collapsed during rush hour traffic. The bridge, which crossed over the Ohio River, connecting Point Pleasant and Gallipolis, collapsed due to a small defect.
The Mothman, one of the most unsettling cryptids out there, one that many are skeptical about. Is the skepticism out of reason or out of fear? Maybe even both. I can't really answer those questions, but what I can do is go through evidence, sightings, and possible theories for this strange and horrific cryptid. I can't express enough how unsettling the idea of the Mothman really is. A creature slightly larger than a human with giant wings is bad enough, but on top of that, it has big glowing red eyes. The Mothman is tied to tragic events due to it appearing just before disaster strikes. Some people even think it's to blame for some disasters, but other people disagree and believe he is just a warning. One thing is for sure though, something strange happened in Point Pleasant, whether you think it was the Mothman or not. The Mothman is different than the other cryptids I covered on this channel, mostly due to the fact that the Mothman is a more recent cryptid, whereas the Wendigo, Mongolian deathworm, and the Yeti are a little older. I think the Mongolian deathworm being the newest out of the three, but even the Mothman is a lot more new than the Mongolian deathworm. The Mothman originates in West Virginia, specifically in the Point Pleasant area. The closest thing I could really compare it to is the boogeyman, but for natural disasters. One of the first sightings happened in November of 1966. And I say one of the first because there's one before this, but there's not that much substance to it. Roger and Linda Scarberry, accompanied by Steve and Mary Millette, were driving to a remote area in Point Pleasant known as the TNT area. The first person to see the Mothman was Steve Millette, when he saw glowing red eyes and told the rest of the group. The group described it as a gray man-like creature with wings. Linda Scarberry described the infamous red eyes as circular, fiery red eyes, and a man but with wings. She even stated, "You could see muscles in its legs," which gives an idea just how close they could have been to the monster. They were struck with fear, and in a hurry they drove away. Although they were going 100 miles per hour down the road, the creature started flying and chased them and even caught up despite the speed they were going. The only reason they managed to lose the flying beast is because he stopped chasing them as they got closer to town. Mere days after this happened, more and more sightings were reported. Although, keep in mind, this is after the local newspaper reported it. George Johnson, the Mason County Sheriff at the time, believed the sightings were just a large heron, and wildlife biologist Robert L. Smith said that the sightings fit the description of the sandhill crane, which is almost as tall as a man and has a 7-foot wingspan. Although this bird is not native to the region. Keep in mind, as I mentioned before, more sightings came out after the local newspaper reported on the first sightings. I'm not discrediting the original sighting entirely. There's a very easily explanation for the later sightings. It was either for attention or it was just people trying to come up with a reason for things they couldn't really see clearly. For example, contractor Newell Partridge said he saw a creature in a nearby field that had eyes that glowed like bicycle reflectors when he shines a flashlight through it. On top of that extremely vague description, he also blamed Mothman for making his television set make buzzing noises and causing the disappearance of his German Shepherd. It isn't all that unbelievable to think a person could just blame a recently reported unexplainable creature for his dog's disappearance. Many other reportings are seemingly all the same. it's always just seeing big red eyes that reflect light back at you. Mothman sightings are always linked to some type of disaster. The first being the collapse of the Silver Bridge on December 15th, 1967, a year after the first sighting was made. The Silver Bridge connects Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and Gallipolis, Ohio. So it only makes sense that just a year after the Mothman was originally sighted, people began to wonder if he had something to do with it. However, this theory was taken a step further, and believers started connecting other disasters to the Mothman. To name a few, you got Chernobyl, I-35 bridge collapse, the 1999 Russian apartment bombings, 9/11, and even a 2009 swine flu outbreak in Mexico. I'll be blunt, even if you believe in the Mothman, how could you even try and link any of those disasters with him? It makes absolutely no sense as to why these things would be connected to the West Virginian cryptid. Saying it can fly isn't an excuse either, considering it was never spotted outside of West Virginia until after newspapers publicized it. Supposed sightings even claim that they saw the Mothman first, but were simply too scared or worried to come out about it because they don't want to be mocked or laughed at. There are so many variables here that make it hard to believe almost every Mothman encounter. Despite most sightings being unreliable, I do believe that there is some truth to the first reported sighting. There are interesting theories about exactly what could have happened in Point Pleasant in 1966, and some are scarier than the Mothman himself. However, out of the theories that I lay out, there's only one that there's real substance to, in my opinion. The other ones are just suggesting things of what he could be and whatnot. And I'll be honest, it was difficult to find anything about theories whatsoever. It was just people saying, oh, he's this, oh, he's that. The first theory is that the Mothman never existed and it was somehow caused by the United States government, of course, unethically testing on civilians. The US government is no stranger when it comes to testing drugs on the populace. It's no stranger to unethical practices on their citizens, and it's definitely no stranger to conspiracy theories. So when you hear this theory, you shouldn't really be shocked. MKUltra was a highly illegal human experimental program that was designed by the CIA that was meant to figure out what drugs are best at interrogations to break people and force confessions. This was through brainwashing and psychological torture. The government claims it began in 1953, and the government claims it was halted in 1973. I keep saying they claim because, let's be honest, we can't really trust a word they say 99% of the time. And despite popular belief, MKUltra isn't a wild conspiracy theory. It's actually proven, and there are documents out there that show that this all happened and it was real. The program used a multitude of methods to deteriorate subjects' mental states, along with their brain functions. These include, but are not limited to, chemicals, electroshocks, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, abuse, torture, and quite possibly their favorite, psychoactive drugs. The one drug they used the most was LSD, a potent hallucinogenic drug. This was used to extract information from people and even try to mind control them. LSD was the secret that was going to unlock the universe for the CIA. However, they gave up on that idea. The reason they dropped it is also really interesting. Researchers dismissed it as too unpredictable. Who could have thought LSD being unpredictable? And the biggest factor in this is a documented experiment that went wrong. As the experimentation progressed, a point arrived where outsiders were drugged with no explanation whatsoever, and surprise acid trips became something of an occupational hazard among CIA operatives. Adverse reactions often occurred, such as an operative who received the drug in his morning coffee became psychotic and ran across Washington, seeing a monster in every car passing him. Although there is plenty of information out there about MKUltra, this is only the tip of the iceberg because there is still plenty of redacted information. Keep in mind, MKUltra is entirely real, and I believe there is an argument to be made whether or not Mothman or even other related cryptids could have something to do with it. The dates of the sightings match, which are between 1953 and 1973, and we know they tested LSD on the unconsenting public. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they just pumped LSD straight into the Ohio River, affecting all of the residents of Point Pleasant. If this was truly the case, honestly, we will never know, because Uncle Sam doesn't know right from wrong. The second theory is, of course, Mothman is an alien life form. Like many great things, there is a theory that it's an alien. There isn't much substance to this theory other than people claiming to see UFOs around the time of the Mothman sightings, and people just thinking he could be an alien. The next theory is essentially the last one, but instead of an alien, it's on the complete opposite, and it's an angel. Some think that because he appears around disasters, then he's the angel of death. And also, like the last one, there isn't too much for this one. And the last two, I'm gonna group up together. It's just that he actually exists, or he doesn't exist. Those ones are pretty self-explanatory. There's nothing to explain there. He's easy to disprove, is what I'm saying. I'll be honest, with all the attention Mothman actually gets, I expected a lot more evidence and a bit more of an effort to prove him to be real. One thing is for sure though, the Mothman seems to be an easy moneymaker for Point Pleasant. There are museums, restaurants, bakeries, coffee shops, hotels, and a festival. I wouldn't exactly be shocked if many people living in Point Pleasant are against investigating the Mothman at all, because of just how much tourist money they make. I'm not necessarily criticizing them, and trust me, I eat that stuff up, but I just can't help but think it's all for the money and tourism. And the last thing I'm gonna throw in here, I'm not trying to judge anyone, of course, but I'm genuinely curious. Do people actually believe the Mothman is real? There's really not much to it, and for the most part, I feel like people want him to be real because he sounds pretty cool. But I genuinely want to know, and if you do believe the Mothman is real, comment or whatever. And that's about it for this video. I never know how to end these other than saying thanks for watching. If you liked it, give it a like if you want. If you dislike it, go ahead and dislike it. Subscribe if you want to see more. And again, thank you for watching.